Main and Market should be open in the morning. As Stacy, was it 200 North?
250.
250 and 350. Perfect. Okay. All right. I think we can get started. We'll call the meeting to order. And Diane?
I'm going to adapt the Congressional Prayer for Independence Day for this year. Eternal God, stir our minds and stimulate our hearts with a high sense of patriotism as we approach the 4th of July. May all that this day symbolizes renew our faith in freedom, our devotion to democracy, and redouble our efforts to keep a government of the people, by the people, and for the people truly alive in our world. Grant that we may highly resolve on this great day to dedicate ourselves anew to the task of ushering in an era where goodwill shall live in the hearts of a free people, justice shall be the light to guide their feet, and peace shall be the goal of humankind. To the glory of your holy name and the good of our nation, our state, our city, and of all mankind. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Diane. Okay, we'll start with the, I'll let the minutes reflect that Councilman Clondaris is absent. There are 6 present, still requires 4 votes for passage of any, or action on any item tonight. So let's move to the minutes from June 4th. Did you all have the opportunity to look through those minutes and see any corrections?
I would move to approve the minutes from June 4th, 2018.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Tonight, we've got a couple visitors from Bell Tire, Ray Turner, who is the Director of Retail Operations, and John Hagartha, the Warsaw Manager. So, gentlemen want to approach the podium if you got a few things you want to say.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Yeah, we just want to introduce ourselves to the community, let you know how thankful we are that for how welcoming Warsaw and Kosciuszko County, correct, has been. Warsaw's got a little place in my heart. I spent about 3 years here. Back when I worked for Tire Barn, I opened up the Tire Barn here when it first came. So now I get to circle around and open up a competitor when we come. So, but love the town, and Bell Tire is a family-owned, third-generation company. Just really want to be treated like kind of the new neighbor in town, and hopefully you get to know us as your neighbor. But I was talking with Don Barnes, the president, and our COO about how amazing it's been working with the city. We build quite a few of these a year, and you'd be amazed at how difficult it is to get stuff done. And here in Kosciuszko County, it's just been incredible. All the permitting, the building commissions, everything's just been great. My colleagues in Detroit are amazed at how nice everybody is, and I told them that's just kind of the way down here. So just really appreciate the friendliness. Looking forward to working with the community. Part of what we do is as we grow down here in Indiana, is we really like to become part of the community, part of your neighbors. So you'll find all of the employees that we've hired for this location here, which is about 20 to 25. All of them have come from the community and within Kosciuszko County. So John Hogarth moved down from Detroit a few years ago to Columbia City, and he's currently looking for a home out here. Prefers on a lake, his wife said, and I told him there's quite a few in Kosciuszko County to choose from. So looking forward to that. But we're also going to be doing some work. If you would pass the word out, we're going to do a charity challenge here. We've actually identified 5 charities local. You got a lot of charities that do a lot of great work, so it was tough to narrow it down to 5. But the Baker Youth Club, the Combined Community Service, the Beeman Home, Animal Welfare League, and first responders. So we're going to do a charity challenge the first few months that we're open, where a proceed of every single sale is going to go be donated, and the customer gets to choose where they want their proceeds donated to. So it's a lot of fun. We just wrapped up the one in Muncie and made donations in upwards of $10,000. So we're looking forward to giving some of that back to some of the amazing charities you have here. John's going to have a little bit of a slush fund that he's going to be able to use as well. So if you know of a local community or a church or somebody that maybe needs something, that we can maybe help donate, feel free to reach out to John. Maybe somebody's down and needs a set of tires or something like that. Can't do it for everybody, but we just want to help wherever we can. So again, thank you for having us, and I just want to introduce John Hogarth. He's going to be the store manager.
Hi, y'all. I moved down, like Ray said, I moved down here last year, opened up the Fort Wayne, one of the Fort Wayne locations, one of 3. Can't begin to tell you. Indiana's awesome. I love it. Whole lot different from Detroit area. Everybody's a lot friendlier. People hold doors open for people. It's great. It's a great community. My wife, she come down here. I was transmuting back and forth, on the weekends. And my wife came down and she's like, well, why are we still in Michigan? And here we are, and we're going to do great things. We're customer satisfaction all the time. It's just bred into us from day one. That's our motto is customer satisfaction is the bottom line in both ways. By making money and just being successful. It's true. But appreciate the opportunity to come to Warsaw now, stay in Fort Wayne. Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
All right, appreciate it. Welcome.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Any questions of our guests?
Yeah, that's a good-sized building you got there. How many bays is that?
It's going to be 10 bays. We're actually going to have probably 8 service bays, and then 2 bays are dedicated just for alignments. We've just been shopping. That's how all of our bays are set up, and we found that it's kind of one of the slower things around Warsaw, trying to get some service work done. There's a lot of places that are backed up, so we pride ourselves on kind of same-day service and same-day alignments work. We're hoping that we open by the end of the month, as far as the timeline goes.
Good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Nate, Center for Lakes and Streams, going to give us a little update tonight on your work.
Yeah, from tires to lakes. So I wanted to thank you all for your support. You guys have supported us with some annual operational funds for the last several years. So I want to thank you, and I want to show you guys what your investment has done here over the last year. So that's the purpose of this, is to give a little update, and it's going to be focused on the city of Warsaw area and the 3 lakes and the streams that we have here. So first off, economy. So we're looking at Winona, Pike, and Center Lakes here. These 3 lakes generate about $2.5 million in annual property tax revenue. Now that's the lakes themselves. That's not looking at all the property tax revenue around those lakes. It's only the portion of property tax revenue that's attributed specifically to the lake, such that if those lakes would dry up, every cent of that 2.5 million would drive up as well, because those property values would go down accordingly because they're no longer on a lake. Does that make sense? It's just the lake portion of those values. So someone who lives on the lake, their home might be worth $200,000, whereas they were not on the lake and they were out in a cornfield somewhere, their home might only be worth $70,000, right? So we've analyzed that for each lake, channel front, lake view, all those different categories, and we then calculated only, in that example I gave, the $130,000, the tax revenue generated from that, just the $130,000, just the extra because it's on one of those 3 lakes. All right, so those lakes do indeed provide $2.5 million in revenue. The values of those lakes, this is a few years old now, but approaching $300 million. And then if we look at the total county lake economic impact, this is not just property taxes, but this is businesses and their sales that are attributable to the lakes being here were over $300 million, and that's every single lake, or that's every single year. And I'll point out that these numbers are all conservative. And so we were very careful in how we analyze all these numbers. And they're not static, so they could go up or down depending on if the lakes get better or worse in the future. And feel free to interrupt at any point if you've got a follow-up question. So spills and kills, these are some of the bad things that have happened on our lakes over the recent years. One thing in 2018 here, we had a train derailment workshop up in Syracuse, and there's going to be another one here in Warsaw as a result. We had one representative from the city of Warsaw up there from the fire department. This was really great to have in our community because we're being proactive, looking ahead to potential train derailments, and we did have a minor one just this year here in Warsaw. So we want to be sure, since we have all of these lakes that are in close proximity to railroad tracks, and we have streams that flow into lakes in close proximity to railroad tracks, as well as wetlands that flow into streams and lakes in close proximity to railroad tracks. We want to be proactive to know exactly what we're dealing with, what are coming through on these train lines, and what should we do if we have to respond to something like that. All right, E. coli at Pike and Center Lake beaches. We did this study a few years back, and those two beaches were closed about a third of the time due to high E. coli levels. And so we figured out what the cause was, and we've been working then with you all, with your Parks and Recreation, and they've been really good about implementing some changes. And since then, we've had very little E. coli issues on these two lakes. So that's a good success story. Blue-green algae. So there's different types of algae in our lakes. The one that we're most concerned about is blue-green algae because it can produce toxins which can be harmful to people and their pets. And this is a picture of Center Lake in early 2017. A pilot was flying over, took this picture, sent it to us and said, "Why is Center Lake red?" So we took some samples, and it's red due to blue-green algae. And so blue-green algae is not always blue-green in color. This is Planktothrix rubescens, is the species of algae we found out in the lake. And it actually stayed all the way through the early part of summer. Normally, this algae is only found right after ice comes off of a lake in the early spring, just for a short period of time. But this hung around for a while. So we were studying that. It did have toxins associated with it. We were happy to see that it cleared up by the summer months when most people would be in the water. So that was a good thing. But what it did was it showed us that there's concern for Pike and Center Lakes with algae toxins. Up until that point, we had been focusing mostly on Winona Lake for our weekly sampling. And now I'm happy to say here, starting in 2018, we're going to be including Center, Pike, and Winona in our weekly rotation of sampling. So all three of our major lakes then in the city of Warsaw are going to be sampled every week through the summer months so that we can keep an eye on these things. And not only that, but we've been sampling the lakes, and we're also going to start now sampling the public beaches. We have 7 public beaches throughout the county. 2 of them are here in Warsaw, 1 on Pike and 1 on Center. So we're going to start doing that, or we've already begun. We've already been sampling for 4 weeks here this summer. So we're amping up the effort of sampling here in the city for our residents here. We're looking for drivers for the algae production. We're also developing a rapid lab analysis. So right now we send these samples off to a lab in Ohio, and we hear back maybe a month or 2 later what the toxin levels were. But we just got a grant from the K21 Health Foundation. We just got notification from them. We're going to be working on adding in this capacity into our own new science facility coming up this fall, which is going to be really cool. So we'll be able to do our own analyses right here in town, and we'll get the turnaround time down to about 48 hours. So we'll be able to go out and sample these lakes Monday through Wednesday, and by the weekend we'll know if we have a toxin issue or not. A lot better than waiting a month or 2 and having to tell someone, hey, you know, when your grandkids were in the water, they should not have been in the water back 6 weeks ago. So we'll know right away now, which is going to be a really big improvement. So as we learn about these things, we just improve our ability to do these things well for our residents. All right, the river cleanup project, just to remind you about that, cleaning up, we cleaned up over 280 log jams and more since then. We've been working with these different partners on that project, 30 miles of the Tippecanoe River, and in an ongoing way, Paddlers for Conservation, P4C there, still has volunteer cleanup projects. There's another one coming up here this summer, and we'll be helping get the word out for that. We've been looking at the history of our lakes. Unfortunately, Pike and Center don't have a really good historical record to be able to see how those lakes are changed over time, which is another reason for us including those lakes now going forward in our weekly sampling during the summer, so we can get a little bit more of a trend on those lakes and see if they're getting better or worse over time. So this is Winona, and we're looking at the clarity of the lake, and we see that Winona is less clear now than it was in the past, and we also have less oxygen, which is harmful to some of the fish that are trying to live there than what we had in the past as well. And then here's just a slide with a few other miscellaneous things that we've been working on together, the Lilly Center and the City of Warsaw. So we partner very closely with your stormwater utility. Probably if I had to pick two departments that we work most closely with, it would be Parks and Rec and stormwater utility. We've got a lot of overlap and work a lot together. Stormwater utility is doing some long-term planning, and we've been helping out with that process, as well as just lots of impromptu meetings and talking about different issues we have in the city. The Lakes Festival is a big partnership opportunity, and thank you guys again for hosting us at the festival. Another big success, 6,000 people, really cool fireworks right here in the heart of the city of Warsaw. And so thank you guys again for hosting. Your Parks and Recreation Department is our great hosts for us, so thank you guys for continuing to help with that. Summer programs, the Byron Brady Boardwalk, still a great sort of success from a couple years ago. And the Clean Waters Partnership we've been working with, and the Current Effects, the Stormwater Project, that art project you see pictured there, and lots of K-12 programming in our local schools. That wraps up all the things I wanted to go through, and I went through quickly to keep your meeting moving. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Thank you. Thanks for everything you guys have been doing. It's certainly appreciated. I know we'll consider your request as our budget process rolls along, but I think the update probably helped the council get an idea of the value of what you're doing for our community. So thanks, Nate.
Thank you, guys.
Any questions? All right. Very good. All right. I'm going to move into reports, oral written communication. I had just put a letter in your packet about the notification from the DNR that the Little Crow Milling Company factory building has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and that's just a little bit more icing on the cake for that project. Just wanted you to be aware of Commonwealth Engineering and their part in that. Obviously, there were some historical tax credits for trying to maintain that architecture, and they did a great job, and it is now on the National Register of Historic Places, so thought it'd be good for y'all to know. You've got the May Fund report. Lynn, anything to draw note to?
I didn't see anything that was particularly
Okay.
noteworthy.
All right, any questions? Anybody have a chance to take a look at that? Okay. All right. I think before we move into new business, I'm going to have Jeremy come up. I'd asked him to give a update on our Buffalo Street project, and I thought it'd be good to just fill everybody in on where we stand with the work that's going on down there now and the construction that'll begin this fall. So, Jeremy?
I know in the last week I've had a few of you ask me where we're at with the Buffalo Street project and what's coming in the future, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of update. I gave the Redevelopment Commission today an update of where we're at. Obviously, construction-wise, we're in full swing of reconstruction of the infrastructure, the main portion of being that the sanitary sewer. This project's been a long time coming. I know we've been working with the wastewater department for about 5 or 6 years, trying to figure out when the timing of this project would happen, given the sanitary sewer's current state and the need to replace the lift station that was currently located in the intersection of the two streets. one being Buffalo Street. So that infrastructure is obviously under full construction. The lift station's been completed. They're working on the sanitary sewer, which should be done by the end of this week or next week, so it'll be wrapped up pretty soon, and then they'll move to some stormwater infrastructure that needs to be done in anticipation of the road improvements, the sidewalks, the curbs, and the asphalt. So far, everything's been going pretty well. There's no big hurdles to overcome. Obviously, weather always plays a large part in the completion of infrastructure work. Assuming everything stays on schedule, we anticipate to be done early this fall, either sometime in September or October. The actual deadline for the contractor himself is November 4th, so they have to be completed by November 4th. But obviously, if everything keeps going forward the way it is now, we anticipate, hopefully, we should have that infrastructure done ahead of schedule. I've also handed out tonight a letter from Matthews just giving an explanation of where he's at in his portion of the project. Obviously, he can't start his work until our infrastructure is in place, and we've been diligently working on that for the last couple of years in conjunction not only with him but with regional cities funding to put this project together and to get it in the ground and above the ground. His portion obviously will be the construction of the Muse and townhomes. They're currently in the process of designing those, which they hope to have complete by September. Assuming that our infrastructure is complete, we are hoping that the first building will be built or started construction this fall with a spring completion date, at which time they will have a model home and start marketing their product. So right now, everything is kind of hinging on us completing our infrastructure. And once we do that, we expect him to be in here this fall to start the first building, and hopefully it'll be the first of many to come. Is there any questions on the project itself or where we're at?
Jeremy, would you just mention the timeline as far as the current contract we're under with the infrastructure, the fact that last year we decided to delay it because we felt like the costs were going to come in, the bids were going to come in pretty high.
Obviously, when you're trying to bid projects, we like to try to bid them either late fall, early winter, or early January. The reason being is contractors like to set their work up for the year. So they'll give more favorable pricing on the first projects. When you catch them at the end of the year and you expect something to get done, which is what we're going to see with the July letting of the Market Street, which is why we've pushed that. We've basically given them this year and all of next year to complete the Market Street project we're about to let. Because if you give them the time, they're going to fit it into their schedule. If you force them to do it within your time frame, you're going to pay a higher price. Because they have work that they're committed to now. They have work that they have to get done, and they can be penalized if they don't get done. So your project isn't going to be their highest priority unless you pay them more. So obviously, whenever we're bidding these projects, we try to give them some leeway. Given the time frame it took us to complete the regional cities application and the process and the engineering, it just so happened to fall that we were ready to let this project in late fall. Knowing that, we didn't want to try to force this into a shoe and try to get it done sometime in the summer, so we gave them the extra time to get better pricing. So the November 4th allows them to fit this project into their schedule instead of us trying to fit our project or them trying to fit their work into the schedule we wanted to see. So we gave a little bit more flexibility for a little better pricing.
Questions? All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yep.
All right. Seeing no unfinished business on the agenda, let's move into new business. This first item, Resolution 2018-0701, is an encumbrance adjustment from Clerk Treasurer's Office. Lynn?
Mayor, we do have one other report.
He's not looking at the new agenda.
Okay.
We put Stacy under reports.
Oh, you did. It's not on mine. Okay. Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we had that down in new business, which it shouldn't have been in, obviously, and I didn't get the updated agenda, although.
And Council, I asked for Stacy to give us an overview of what was going on with IT, so as you receive your budget and you're going to see certain departments having a large expenditure here, you would kind of know where it was all going and what the plan was. And so she sent you an excellent letter earlier this week, and thank you for coming, Stacy.
Yeah. So we've been making a lot of technology advancements the last couple of years. We kind of went from the archaic age up to a more normal age of technology. And so we've been really working on projects to collaborate between all departments. And so I've been meeting with department heads at least once a year to go over any technology-related projects or needs that they have, and that allows us to combine projects, to combine efforts, to combine expenditures, whatever the case might be, to be more efficient and more cost-effective with what we're doing with IT. So the letter that you have in front of you is just talking about new things. So there are some things that have been established in past budget years that have been in past budgets. This does not address that. This would be new things for this year that you have not seen in a previous budget. The biggest one is our citywide server project. So this would be for phase 2 for 2019. We're currently in the middle of phase 1. And this project is to develop a citywide server network similar to what the county has, if you're familiar with their arrangement, where everyone is supported off the same server system, despite being at different locations. So this is going to give us backup of our files. It's going to allow us to capitalize on maybe purchasing one software and then just additional licenses versus 3 different departments having to pay the full cost of a software item. Protection with our antivirus. There's just a number of things that we can do with this. One of the biggest things is just security and reliability. We have a lot of servers right now that are approaching the end of their life, or they've maxed out on storage space, and instead of each department going one by one, getting what they need, we're bringing everybody together and trying to do this the right way. So phase 1 is currently underway. That supports the police department, the street department, wastewater, and then everyone in City Hall. Phase 2 represents about 20% of the project, and that will bring on airport, cemetery, fire, and parks. Fire would be station 1 and 2. Parks would be their park office and Pete Thorne, so they both have multiple offices represented. And that would really complete our citywide server network at that point. So you'll see under the cost breakdowns, I've listed the actual cost of the project, buying the equipment, putting the infrastructure in place. There's also a monthly cost associated with that with Metronet. So right now, police, wastewater, Public Works, and City Hall are paying for point-to-point circuits. Those are direct fiber connections between those departments and City Hall so that we can securely send data back and forth. That's especially important with GIS files and things that are too big to put in the cloud. So those costs that you see represented by the month for the Metronet is to support that direct fiber connection with Metronet to send data back and forth. And just to kind of give you an idea on the timeline where we're at right now, we're expecting phase 1 to be finished, I'm going to say probably late summer, August, September at this point. So at that point, we'll have those 4 locations up and running, and then we would be looking to implement the rest of them next year to complete the project. You'll also see that we have volume licensed antivirus protection. Right now, we have departments who are either not using antivirus, who are using freebie programs you can get on the internet. We have some people using Norton, which is okay, but not the best. And then we have some who are using a highly professional level antivirus. And if we're going to implement this equipment, we need to protect it properly. And we've also had some breaches with malware, with viruses that have affected entire departments in some cases. We need to eliminate that from happening if we're going to be storing so much data on our computers, if we're going to be relying on that IT infrastructure so heavily. So this is to take advantage of volume licensing, and it represents not just the cost to cover individual machines, but also to cover a portion of the server antivirus. So each user that the department will be budgeting for will help to cover both, not just that user, but also a small portion of the server equipment as well. The live meeting streaming, you're familiar with that. That was not something written into last year's budgets because it happened at the end of last year. But that is to continue streaming through our Boxcast service, as well as to make some IT or some AV upgrades. Right now you have desktop mics in between every two seats up there, and we want to have a mic at every seat for better sound quality. We also want to use directional mics, which is like what this one is. You can hear me a little more clearly. The ones up there are omnidirectional, intended to pick up sound from all around you. So those are some things we want to do just to make the experience a little bit better. We started with this equipment because it was in place to see how it did, to see what we could do with it. We feel like it would really be prudent to improve that and to make those adjustments, because we are hoping to get all of the boards and commissions up and running by the end of this year. So right now we have Council, Board of Works, Redevelopment, BZA, Plan Commission, code hearings, and we're starting the fire territory next week with live streaming, and then we'll be bringing the others on probably a month at a time between now and the end of the year. So we want to make sure that that audio is as good as it can be, but also adjustable to each board and each person sitting in the seat for the various meetings. And then the last thing is the social media outreach. So I heard from this has been a really important thing for us. We've really been able to engage with residents in a new way. And I just heard from our social media management company that our reach for the month of June, which is people seeing our posts, not necessarily always clicking on them, but at least seeing the content in their newsfeed, was 139,000 people. And the people interacting with it, or the engagement, was over 10,000. So just for 1 month, we had over 10,000 people commenting, clicking, sharing our posts, and 139,000+ people seeing that information. This last week, I think, was a really good example of how that's benefited us with all the railroad closures. We've been putting a lot of information out there, but it's enabled us to get the word out to residents as to up-to-date closures and openings so that they can get to where they need to go and be in the loop on what's going on. And then also just we've included an amount for some sort of advertising engagement campaign. We don't have specifics on that at this time, but something to continue to boost engagement and continue to engage the community in a new way, especially with that being one of our strongest ways to communicate with residents at this time. We see people private messaging us all the time, trying to take care of their trash not being picked up, or they have a limb down that they need picked up, or you name it, a sewer backup that, you know, they need somebody to come look at it to determine if it's their property or their lines or the city's lines. And we can get that word out to the departments then. That's how it's convenient for them, and so we want to adapt to that. So I don't know what other questions you have. I'm glad to answer questions. I'm also glad to meet with you one-on-one as the budget process goes on. I know you haven't seen the budgets yet at this point, but if you have any questions now, I'd be glad to help answer those.
Just one question. I understand fire and parks, they have multiple locations, so that drives the cost up, but there's a difference in the monthly fees for fire versus parks and the other departments. What drives that?
Well, it is from one location to another. So for fire, we have from City Hall to Fire Station 1 and City Hall to Fire Station 2. So they're having 2 direct fiber lines running in different directions. For the Parks Department, we're handling that a little bit differently. So for the main office, we're going to have that direct fiber connection. However, for the Pete Thorne office, that's a seasonal office, it was not cost effective to pay for a direct fiber line for 12 months of the year when it's being used for 3 or 4 months of the year. So we're going to do a VPN connection, a virtual connection for them. They're not moving a lot of heavy data back and forth, so we can handle speeds for them using that virtual connection versus paying 12 months of the year for that fiber connection. So that's where that looks a little bit different.
When will we get Fire Station 3?
Fire Station 3 will likely be, from my conversations with the chief, will likely be a similar situation to the Pete Thorne Center. He doesn't see them needing to push a lot of data back and forth because so much of their software is cloud-based. And so we're going to kind of see how it goes once the station's up and running. But at this point, we're not including them because it's too early to plan for that. But based on initial conversations, I think the virtual connection, and he agrees, would probably be the best solution, or at least try it initially. And then, you know, increase our engagement in that way if we need to, if that's not working for them, so.
Sounds good.
How do you find out when a resident has directly messaged us? Is that the company that's managing that notifies you, or how do we?
So our office handles a majority of that engagement with residents. We're notified through our Facebook account that they've sent a message or that they've commented. That company is helping us to respond to some of that, but they're helping us to plan posts, to plan content, some of the really time-consuming things that we can't support on a full-time basis. And then we're the ones engaging directly with those residents as they have questions and concerns and things like that.
I didn't know if there was an actual person here checking it every day or how it worked.
Most of the time I do, but at times others are doing it as well, yeah.
Okay.
And something in the explanation of the server project, you know, we're looking into an asset management system that this fiber network will support, and that's pretty much going to create a platform to do that across all departments. So that's one real important component that will be supported by this. Stacy had also mentioned, I just want to mention, you know, what really started this was the difficulty passing GIS large data files between the wastewater and street department and the building and plan department. That's really what drove the need to try and improve speeds and create this network. So those are two huge issues, and the asset management is something that we will be allowed to have a great capability to do that once this system is all set up. So.
And I'm intrigued by the idea of having us using the same antivirus software, the same program, so that everybody's on the same page and people aren't just shopping for what they're comfortable with or what they've already done, and we can get some discounts then by having group licenses. I think that'll be a real asset to the city.
We're really trying to build consistency like you would see in any professional company out there. We were maybe a little slow to the game, but we've really improved a lot the last couple of years. And with the server coming in, now is the ideal time to start looking at other things like that antivirus, because we can deploy that through the server to those machines. And we can start kind of combining everybody's efforts instead of every department going about it their own way or making their own purchases. We can start to centralize our technology.
I just want to say thank you, because I know you've done a lot of research into this, you've put a lot of training in, you've done a lot to try to see what we could do better. So I just want to express my thanks for all that you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you, Stacy, appreciate it. Okay, now we'll move into Resolution 2018-0701. This is the adjustment of encumbrances from the Clerk Treasurer's Office, so I'll turn this over to Lynn.
If you recall, we do this every year about the same time. It's housekeeping for our budget as we're going forward for the 2019 budget. The ELGF asked us to make a resolution saying what has been liquidated from encumbrances that were carried over from funds from last year budget to this year's budget. And you have a list of everything that was liquidated. Not spent, but liquidated. So I just need your approval.
Questions? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2018-0701?
So moved.
Second, is there a second? All right, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thanks, Lynn. And we'll move on to, I suppose on the new agenda, it would be item number 2, the Mitchell-Messmore annexation. Jeremy?
Just like the other annexations we've done, this is just a petition, so they are petitioning the city for annexation. This will kick the ball off for us advertising for a public hearing and presenting the fiscal plan, the fiscal resolution, as well as the ordinance. If you've tried to read the legal description, I'm sure you got confused. That's why I've included a map to show you the properties, and they're in a blue, the area that they're requesting to be annexed. This is out by Bella Augusta, which is under construction now, and Shadow Lakes, which we just annexed in. So it's out in that area. It's roughly 3 tracts of land. Each one of those tracts is somewhere in the 30 acres. So it's about 90-some acres in total. So this is just for your acknowledgement. After this, I will advertise for the public hearing, and then we'll start the process for the ordinance itself and the resolution. So if you have any questions.
I think when you reviewed this with plan, you mentioned that all of the utilities are already out there, so this won't encumber extra costs for us. This might be something important for.
Yeah, so there's no one to actually run utilities to. These are 3 tracks currently used for agricultural, and they'll be brought in as R1. So there's no one actually to run any utilities, and as they develop, then that's when the utilities would be run per those developments as they occur. Yeah, we wouldn't be necessarily running any infrastructure. We're not building any roads. This is just annexing those properties in so that they could be developed in the future. And I've talked a little bit about this, and there'll be some more annexations to come, and the reason being, obviously, is this is the last year you can do an annexation before the census, and then there's a 2-year window in which you cannot do annexations. So the True Hotel ones will be, public hearing will be on the 16th. This public hearing, I believe, will be somewhere in August. And then I have another one that we'll be working on, hopefully, here shortly. That'll be sometime in August or September. So just trying to get all of these done before the clock runs out.
All right, any questions? Again, I think Jeremy's alluded to the multiple annexations that we've done, obviously the airport, Shadow Lakes, and I think you'll also see reflected when we start budgets that expansion of our road network and city services will probably impact our budget next year. But I think when all is said and done, certainly have a summary of the amount of area and the population and assessed value that we have been able to annex, again, bumping up against this deadline. So,
Yeah,
again,
the road mileage will be the big one. Population, most of the annexations that we're doing, Shadow Lakes had a significant population. These 3 parcels in the future will have a significant population, as you're probably looking somewhere between 60 to 90 homes per parcel. But a lot of that is creating the opportunity for future developments.
Well, again, I appreciate all the hard work Jeremy and his office have done on this. These are requisite steps that, depending on the type of annexation it is, there's a lot that goes into it in the planning and notifications. And again, he's getting a slew of them here. So again, I appreciate the hard work that he's doing. All right, thank you. Jeremy, I guess you're back up with this tax abatement application from West Hill Shell Building.
Yeah, obviously we refer to it as the Shell Building, but obviously now Patrick Industries occupies that building, and Patrick Industries looking at expanding that facility by roughly another 60,000 square feet. So they're basically doubling their current capacity in that facility. I believe they're operational now. Hopefully in the next 6 months they'll have doubled their capacity and employees. And I think they're looking at hiring roughly another 100 employees as part of this process. So certainly from a job creation and from an investment standpoint, the money is being invested and the jobs are being created to grant the 10-year tax abatement request. It's a standard tax abatement that we give to anybody. That abatement sheet's on the back of the form, so you can see it's our standard 10-year tax abatement form. And this is for the real property, the personal property. I've discussed with them, and I'm assuming they will submit at some point in time. But because there's no real property to be put into this new facility yet, once the facility gets a little further along, I would imagine they would submit their personal property at that time.
I just had one question on it. The start date is 6/25/18 and the completion date is 2/1/18, and we've already gone past 2/1/18.
I imagine it's 2/1/19. Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking.
This is similar to the other buildings that we've built recently, the Shell Building being one, Banner Medical, and then Wynano PVD, the third phase. These are tilt-up precast panels. So it goes really quick. One day you don't have a building, 3 days later you have an entire building. They're prefabbed off-site. The panels are prefabbed off-site and then brought in and put up. If you haven't been out to see one of those, certainly if you get a chance, it's something to see. And the buildings look great, and their longevity is a little better than a sheet metal or post and barn type construction.
So we're thinking that this would start then in 19, that they'd be up and ready?
They are starting construction now.
Now,
It will
okay,
be
so-
done early 19.
Okay.
They will occupy, once the building is shelled out, they'll come in and put the equipment in. I imagine it will be a month or two of them installing that equipment. So there'll be production, there'll be some production out of that sometime, probably mid next year, if I had to guess.
Okay.
Anybody else? Again, we're very proud of the work that we've done out in the tech park and the ability to grow and develop, and given these abatements, again, is certainly incentive to grow that tech park as we move into phase 2. Again, a lot of hard work. This just didn't happen by accident. There's been a lot of planning, and this has been going on for many years, and we're starting to see the fruits of a lot of the hard work that we did. So with that, I would ask for your consideration of this abatement request. If there aren't any further questions.
I'd move we approve it just with the correction of the date.
I got it corrected, thank you.
Duly noted. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further questions or concerns? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Pass 6-0. All right. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay. Anybody else got anything?
Yes, I'd like to invite the council to the next park board meeting, which is July 17th. It'll be at 5:15, and we're going to hold it in the Center Lake Pavilion. And we're actually going to start the exploration of the Center Park Master Plan with Design Collaborative. So they'll be there that evening to give us the results of, like, they took public opinion during the Lakes Festival, and they've been contacting some other organizations to get opinion on what should happen down there. And then this is a chance for everybody in the room, the public, to come in and say what they would like to see happen there. And you know, it can be as creative as we want. This is kind of the fun part. This is the dreaming wish list part. For public to come in and say what they would like to see happen. So it'll start at 5:15. I'm guessing it'll be a little bit longer meeting, so those of you that don't get off work, you're gonna get there at 5:30 or 6, you'd still be there for a significant portion of it. So I would just encourage everybody to be a part of that so that you know what's going on down there. So that's July 17th, and it'll begin at 5:15 in the Center Lake Pavilion.
Okay.
Mayor, is the Traffic Safety Commission meeting on the 4th? It says that on the, it is, so it's been pushed one more week out. Okay, thank you. Thanks, I saw it on the calendar and thought,
Yeah. It's the 11th.
it's on the 11th?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Thanks.
I would, again, like to thank Stacy. She left, but she did a marvelous job during our Norfolk and Southern construction. You know, we had great contact with the track supervisor. They got in, they brought a very significant amount of equipment and manpower to come in. Here we sit about a week later, and all our roads will be open, crossings will be open tomorrow. And it's, I think she did a great job of communicating with the public, and I certainly appreciate the dedication and priority that Norfolk Southern placed on getting through our community and keeping the closings to a minimum. I know it was a really difficult time that first day, but they got things open. The majority of those crossings in town open the next day, and we're slowly getting back to normal. Got all kinds of other projects going on in the community, but this is the big one that we were concerned about, and I think we got through it pretty well. So
I think to add to that too, our police and firemen were out there, and they were very courteous, very helpful to people, very watchful for safety, and I really appreciate their involvement too with everything else they had to do this busy week, that they took the time to be nice to people and help them out and get them the right places. So
yeah, it was a tough time, and you're exactly right. All the departments shared in getting us through that. So, all right, visitors' questions and comments.
Couple questions. Compliment to Stacy with the social media. Great job. I mean, communicating with the city. She's done obviously a marvelous job with that many hits on the social media site. Congratulations and
I just
great
like to
job.
say the council, 3 years ago, we had a strategic planning meeting and identified this as a priority. And now 2-3 years later, you're right, she's done a great job. So
Yeah, I do it for a living, and those are, with thousands of sites, and a marvelous job on her part with that. Question, a couple things came up in the meeting that just prompted a couple questions for me. The Winona PVD compliance forms, I remember being on the council and doing the abatement around May for Winona PVD on their abatement. I don't recall, I've watched all the tapes of the meetings, I've read Ink Free, I've read the Times Union on the accounts, and I didn't see that come up. And I wondered if that maybe, I believe it was a 10-year abatement at that point, and I wondered if, maybe I can ask you or ask Jeremy to check into that. Maybe that's an oversight, or maybe I just missed something.
So initially, when Winona PVD did their first project, it made sense for them. They were a startup company, keep in mind, so it made sense for them to do a tax abatement. As that company's production and growth occurred, they came to us for a bond issue. In the first bond issue, obviously, you can't do a tax abatement and a bond issue. So the first bond issue they then foregone the rest of that tax abatement. So that tax abatement went away, and the bond issue came in. Subsequently, we've done 2 other bond issues for them, and what started out as, I believe, 30-some employees, now is about 160-some employees. So from a job growth and a production and what's occurred out there, it's been a great mechanism to create those jobs and create the infrastructure that we need to get businesses to grow. So the tax abatement went away when they did the first bond issue.
Sounds like another great thing your administration's done. Congratulations to you and on that with the Winona PVD. On the Buffalo Street project, I had a question. Since the update was here at the council meeting, I thought I'd ask the question. Is the city or the redevelopment commission or any entity within the city providing the developer with money in this project? Is he getting, I understand you've given the old Red Cross building, or I think at some point we bought the building, it was a homeless shelter down there by Paul Rafier's place. Is the city providing money to this developer to start the project or help complete it besides, the infrastructure that's being done on the project?
No, and Jeremy can answer this as well, but the property that the developer will use is part of our agreement with him. He's not given the property until the property is actually developed. The Red Cross building he purchased. We did not purchase that building. He's got, I think Jeremy gave the update tonight, he's got several properties as he's purchased, and he's closing on several more in the next few weeks. So it's a combination of him purchasing property and then the property that the city had acquired as we've gone through the process. There's a very tight subrecipient agreement with the RDA based on the regional cities funds that will be utilized, and that spells out performance for him and for the city. An example, the city will be reimbursed for the infrastructure work that we're doing, but we can't obviously send that bill until the work is done and we've spent the money. And his agreement with the RDA is a separate agreement, subrecipient agreement, and it's we've got a similar agreement with him on that property. Jeremy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, most of you were here, some of you might have come into it halfway, but this project isn't something that developed yesterday by any means. It's been something we've been working on all the way back since 2009, which coincidentally was the property we acquired, which was actually the Heartline property, not the Red Cross property. So that was the first property we acquired. At the time when we were working on this project, like I said, it's been a long process in terms of what has occurred and what we initially intended to do down there. At one point in time, we had talked about putting a new city hall down there prior to this building becoming available. So we had purchased the Heartline property back in 09 or 08, it's been a while, for the purpose of the lift station, knowing, like I've said all along, we had a collapsing, falling apart sanitary sewer line. We had an old lift station that was not operating the way it should in the middle of the street, which we typically don't stick lift stations in the middle of the street anymore. That was done a long time ago. We wouldn't do that now. So we knew there was a lot of issues in this area. And so as the project developed over the years, things changed. One of the things that changed, obviously, was the lift station. We no longer wanted to use the Heartline property. We didn't put the city hall down there. So we came together to look at other options, other ideas. We knew Indiana American Water was leaving, but we didn't want a whole of a building down there. So what ultimately came out was this mixed-use development. After creating an idea of what we wanted to do, we then sought a developer to turn that idea into reality. We liked the product that Dave Matthews had done up in South Bend, and he had done it very well in a couple of different scenarios up there, so certainly that was the product that we wanted to see. And reaching out to him, we had come to this agreement that ultimately became the regional cities and the RDA agreement. In that agreement, we would dispose of the property as he builds those units, in the same way with the mixed-use building, which would be the Indiana American Water building. As he would develop that mixed-use building, or a partner of his develop that mixed-use building, we would dispose of that property to him at that time. So what we have in it is the property we currently own. And we also have $3.5 million that we're building in infrastructure. Of that $3.5 million, we will be reimbursed $1.6 million. So overall, we have roughly $1.8 million in city money that will go into this project. Of that $1.8 million, roughly $650,000 of it is sanitary sewer improvements that were going to have to be done regardless of what we did. If we did nothing down there, we had $650,000 in a lift station and a sanitary main that had to be replaced. We had been pushing it off for year after year after year, and I know Brian is happy to have that in the ground, or going in the ground now. So that was something that had to be done regardless. So we've leveraged the city's $1.8 million into a $20.5 million investment from a private company. So that was the gist of our project. That was the point of the regional cities and the RDA agreement, was we are leveraging our $1.8 million that we're going to put in infrastructure for roughly $3.5 million of new road, new sidewalk, street lights, sanitary sewer, lift station, and a public plaza for $20.5 million of homes in a mixed-use building. Is there any questions on?
Oh, I have a question.
Most of you know that 20 years ago, I was involved in the Hyatt Palma study, and I worked for the WCDC for downtown. So I'm very familiar with the root of this project and how it got started. My question is, as I'm listening to this meeting tonight, the Parks Department is going to have a study, a master plan study about Central Park, and yet the only study I'm aware of that talks to this project is over 20 years old. And I'm wondering how we came to the conclusion that this property down here, a mixed-use development, was the appropriate use for it. Was there a public input study or something I'm unaware of besides the Hyatt Palma study?
So actually, it was a combination of the Hyatt Palma study. If you look at the Hyatt Palma study, one of the goals that they had that we should look at doing was trying to tie the downtown to the lake that we have and providing that connection. In terms of that, we had ideas. We talked about redoing the boulevard. Back in 2011 or 12, we engaged Ball State to do a charrette. And one of the things that came out of that charrette was, in essence, making a connection down Buffalo Street with some kind of public plaza, so that as you're standing downtown, you can look down and see what is that down there, and draws you down to the lake, makes that connection to the downtown and to the lake. So that study, both the original Hyatt Palma study and the Ball State charrette, trying to think of the name of the Ball State study. Anyways, that study is what got us embarked on trying to figure out how to make that connection. which-
Imagine Warsaw, I think.
Imagine Warsaw, yes, yeah.
And I think we had over 200 individuals come into this very room and provided input into that and other questions in the community, other visioning. It was a visioning exercise for the community.
So part of the public plaza will be an art piece, a vertical art piece that will be tied into the public plaza that should be visible as you're coming down Buffalo Street to create that draw. So a lot of the elements that came out of that Imagine Warsaw, which we had a lot of people stop by for, and I don't know if you remember all the public boards that were done, I still have them. A lot of the ideas that came out of there we're implementing as part of this Buffalo Street project, including creating housing to bolster and help develop our businesses that are downtown, creating housing where they can walk to the restaurants, where they can walk to the shops. One of the most important things you can do to enhance your downtown, to support your downtown, is to create people. Make people there. If there's people living there, then things will come. Entertainment venues will come. If you have people walking around downtown, shopping and eating, that's what starts to create the life of the downtown. And to do that, you have to have housing. You have to have people within walking distance. The Little Crow project is a prime example of that. The senior housing project we're trying to create on Market Street, 72 units within a 3-minute walk of downtown. The townhomes, the Muse, the condos that we're trying to do as part of the Buffalo Street, 70-some housing units within walking distance of downtown. So all of these projects really come from the Imagine Warsaw study. They come from the Hyatt Palma. They come from the strategic plan that the council has created. These projects are coming out of the ideas, the things that you want to do. You want to improve, you want to enhance, you want to continue to grow your downtown. These are the mechanisms to do that. These come from the plans that you create, the council strategic plan. I mean, look at the downtown elements, protecting our downtown, growing our downtown. These are all ways that we do that.
Okay, we had a lot of answers there, so the simple question is, I'm not a very smart guy. Yes or no, is the city giving money to Matthews besides this property acquisition? Are they giving him money from the redevelopment commission to finish the project, or is he just giving the properties? Money or the properties? Simple.
There is no money going to Dave Matthews from the redevelopment commission. There is the regional cities money, $3.5 million, of which 1.615 is going to the city for the road and plaza. 1.845 is going to him for the townhomes and the Muse and the mixed-use building, which is regional cities money, state money, not the city's money. The city's money is only going into infrastructure and the property we've already purchased. So the only thing he's getting from us is the property that we already own when he builds on it.
Thank you, that clarifies that. And then the last question, Jeremy, you brought this up about the lift station. I remember being at a Board of Works meeting a couple years ago, and when they acquired some of Councilman Frush's backyard property on the lift station, where he, sold some of that and to that. Is this lift station different than what was going to be in your backyard, Jerry? I mean, is it a different project? Because I vaguely remember the city acquiring some of his property because the lift station was going to go back behind your house, back by the cabin. And now have properties we're having to acquire to put in a different lift station?
The lift station sits on the property we acquired from Frush to build the lift station.
Last question. Since it got brought up, I just went to the imaginewarsaw.org website that Ball State did, and that website's dead. Is the study that Trish asked, or that you talked about that the city's done, is that on the city website somewhere? Because the website is dead. It's not. I just checked it.
I'm sure. I mean, it's been 7 years.
Yeah, we've got the boards.
It hasn't been 7 years.
Was it 2012 or 13?
I think it was 12. So it's been 6.
6 years. Okay, 6 years. anyways, we did have it on our website at one point. I don't know if it's still up
Got
there.
all the boards upstairs that.
Certainly we
basically
could-
the deliverables from the study, be happy to share with you.
How about?
And anybody.
I mean, I think since this project seems to be predicated, as Trish brought up, the Hyatt Palma study being 20 years old, and now put an answer from Jeremy that this project was basically there because of the Ball State program with the Ball State students, the kids, here.
Well, let's be clear about it, Kyle. This project, we had to take this project to the RDA. We were competing for these funds with like projects in 11 counties in the Northeast Indiana region. And there's multiple similar type housing projects in Fort Wayne. We sat here with the developer, with the representatives from industry and the community. We had to sell this project to the Regional Development Authority. And this was a regional cities initiative that Governor Pence and Governor Holcomb extended. Essentially, these projects these monies were made available to do these such type of projects. These are projects that we competed for, and we were awarded one of the highest amounts in the region for our project. The project was a viable project. The developer was found to be able to do what we needed to do to make the investment. We'd had a TIF bond that we'd used to do some of the infrastructure. It was a project that we were well suited for, that the project was moving ahead, whether we got regional cities money or not. And regional cities saw the validity in the project. The state IEDC saw the validity in the project. Obviously, some of the early visioning, those are things that that Hyatt Palma study is still a valid study. In fact, there's probably the 4 or 5 initiatives that study has suggested for our community back in 2000, 2001, we have continued with. And you're looking at one of them in this building right here. You're looking at the streetscapes, and you're looking at the extension of our downtown to one of our natural assets, Center Lake. And that was a part of that recommendation. And like Jeremy mentioned, it just doesn't happen overnight.
I'm familiar. I know Eric Doden with Regional Cities, and and I know Eric very well, good friend of mine. And so congratulations on the project. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Anybody else? All right.
Joe.
Yes, sir.
Question.
You want to come to the mic so everybody can hear you?
Dan Smith. What happens to the old rails that are taken out when they're putting the new rails in? Do they cut those suckers up and take them back to Steel Dynamics?
Probably recycling them back at Steel Dynamics.
Yeah, that's what I assume. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, they're cutting them down at 300 South. I think they take them down there and then they whack them. So. Yeah. Yeah. All right, I think we've got one more thing here before we adjourn.
Well, there was a vote taken at my house about 6 weeks ago. My wife Pam, of 53 years, and my Italian Mastiff Big Lou voted that after 44 years and 3 months of practice, it would be nice if I retired at the end of this year. So realizing that those were 2 votes and I only had 1, I acquiesced. So you're going to hear that we're going to have a sale on September 19th, and you're all invited. We're selling everything. But I'll continue practicing until the end of the year, assuming you'll have me. I'm ready. But I wanted you to know, I wanted you to hear it from me, and if you heard about the sale, well, you wouldn't get confused, because it is a matter of being able to liquidate hoes and shovels and old tractors and doghouses and a few things like that.
So you're retiring from farming as well as being?
Well, actually, my heart left that. I have the best weeds this year you have ever seen. And 2.5 acres of red potatoes. You're all welcome to buy potatoes. I know this is a commercial advertisement, shouldn't do that in a public setting. Nevertheless, that's what's happened. And I just got tired of all of that stuff that I do. So anyway, that's what's going to happen. Oh, and we went to St. Louis and we bought sight unseen an 11-year-old motorhome, and we've got that back and putting that together. So
You're going to be on the road.
You might say that.
Mike and Pam's excellent adventure.
You know, with our 135-pound Mastiff in the back of that motorhome, I don't know quite how that's going to work. But we do have some really brand-new pooper scoopers.
There you go.
So Mike and I have had a nice discussion, and there will obviously be more to come, but I thanked him for his many, many, many years of service through at least 3 different mayors that we know of.
Well,
at least 3. Mike will be finishing at the end of this year, and he's guided us through many issues, ups and downs, good things, difficult situations, done a marvelous job, and it'll probably take us 6 months to find somebody to take his place, but we'll have more discussion as the year goes on. But I think it's important to know that Mike will be finishing out the year with the city, and after that, we're going to have to read his blog, I think. So, all right, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Jerry, did you have something to say, or you just want to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thanks. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion? Thank you.
You have signatures.
Don't forget.